R&B the podcast. R&B the podcast with Russ and Blake. R&B the podcast. Starting off 2024.
Wow.
All right, y'all. We're back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
It's 2024 R&B podcast with Russ, with Blake.
Episode 49.
Episode 49. Wow. Thank God for this opportunity to have a new week, a new year, another conversation with my boy.
Yeah.
And,
Blake, you start off thanking God for the opportunity to have this conversation. And today we're getting into some of the science about what motivation is and what keeps us driven based off biological metrics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the purpose of that is some people need that deeper explanation to actually get things going. Mm-hmm. And I think in some circumstances, motivation might not be the answer to getting things accomplished either. So we'll discuss that a bit. But before we get into it, we want to thank Rhythm and Balance production crew for making this beautiful show. And we invite you to reach out to Rhythm and Balance via rnbpod@gmail.com. And also encourage you to like this video or audio clip you're listening to share this content, and to subscribe to our channels, not only on YouTube, but also Instagram, RNB_pod, TikTok, RNB_pod.
Yeah.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff as well. And one more shout out to Elevate Personal Training, LLC. That's me, Coach Blake, here to guide you to your fitness and nutrition goals of 2024. We got 362 days left. Don't wait too long.
That's a lot of days, man.
That's a lot.
To do it maybe not every day, maybe every other day, maybe every 3 days, it takes some drive, dude.
Everything takes drive. Most things worth having or experiencing are difficult. And everyone is faced with adversity. I think we all have to remind ourselves that life is difficult in and of itself, regardless of the circumstances.
Just living is difficult.
Living is difficult.
Just living is difficult.
Being aware of the things going on around you and having to live with this unknowingness, right?
Sure.
As humans, we're anticipatory beings. We like to guess what's going to come, but we never know. And some people get really caught up on the future and are not able to be present.
Yeah. We're hardwired to survive. And if we don't know what could come around the corner that could take out our existence, then we're going to get to thinking and using our brain muscle to try to figure it out. And, we're not future tellers, but we are good at coming up with some imaginatory ideas.
And you say we're wired to survive, but we're not necessarily wired to thrive. And I think that really living your life is different than survival.
Yeah.
And
there's levels.
There's levels. We've talked about people that come from a place of scarcity versus a place of abundance.
True.
And you operate much differently when you feel like you have to fight for survival.
Yeah.
Whereas certain environments, you feel supported, you have more time to be imaginative, more flexibility in your schedule, your finances, things of that nature. You would think that that would lead to a higher level of motivation, but history shows that a lot of people that come from more affluent settings have a harder time staying motivated through their adulthood. And a lot of people that attain high levels of success have clearly gone through some level of adversity that at face value would seem unfavorable, but in hindsight grows those individuals into who they are today as respected beings. One great example, Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, billionaire.
Multi-billionaire. According to the net, first African-American multi-billionaire in America.
Okay.
Oprah grew up with a single mother Oprah got pregnant as a teenager. I don't know if many people know that.
Yeah, I did.
Her child didn't survive.
Oh, man.
You can imagine how terrible that would be to deal with at any stage in life, let alone as a teen.
Wow.
And then so going through something like that, I can't tell you how you would be motivated to continue on. But against the odds, look at where Oprah is today.
Right.
Right.
And she, exuberates this light and confidence. You would never think that maybe she had to go into the depths of darkness to gain that light.
Yeah. And I would never wish difficulty or adversity upon someone, but I would like for the people that don't have a choice to understand that this could be the best thing to happen to you.
Exactly. And it might be what needs to happen to you.
Right.
And you can't, it's hard when you're down to look around and see that this is where you're going to obtain light from. So then when you ascend, you'll be able to shine, right? It's hard to know that, but that's why we like to pod, to try to remind you, you know what I'm saying? If you look around and you see that it's difficult, that means that you're in a place where you can grab on to a resource that you're going to use that you might use for decades, and you're going to be so happy that you went through it.
And a lot of resources go underutilized or underappreciated, right? And some of us have resources and tools available to us, but we don't think they're the right ones. And without exploring the options that have already presented themselves, you don't know if that could possibly be leading you to what you think you're missing out on. But we, again, try to anticipate the future. We think we know what the journey is going to look like. And as we sit and cope with dissatisfaction, sometimes we pass up opportunity because we don't identify that as being what's going to take me out of this headspace.
Well, I mean, I love how you said that, as we sit, and cope. But the fact that you're sitting, you're not moving. You cannot get to your resource if you have not chosen to get up.
Literally. Yeah. That's a good point. And I was just talking to someone today. I see a lot of stuff that recommends like 10,000 steps a day. That's not easy to do. Me, now at this point in my life, my physical activity, my nutrition, all these things are really for longevity purposes. I want to be as healthy as I can for as long as I can, and honestly live as long as I can. And that requires at least 4,000 steps a day to minimize your risk of chronic disease, as far as studies have shown. Obviously, more activity in most cases, the better, as long as you're recovering properly and doing all those things, right? But that benchmark number of 4,000 steps, the average American is not hitting. And so you think,
and you're saying 4,000 steps is like a minimum that you should get for a healthy lifestyle?
4,000 steps minimum requirement on a daily basis to reduce your risk of chronic disease.
Got it.
Per studies.
Sure.
If it's like a 65% decrease, maybe an extra 5,000 steps is going to decrease another 10%. But for the purposes of that study and the purposes of the research, more specifically, that is being, I guess, shared by Peter Diamandis and his group. He's a medical doctor that also, I believe, has aerospace background and does quite a bit of innovation as far as longevity and health practices. And so he, in his 60s, is more aimed at longevity, right?
Right.
So a lot of the things that he's researching is not necessarily how someone is going to be an optimal 20-something-year-old, but he's looking at minimums for someone in their mid to late age.
That makes sense. And I'm excited for us to dive into more of the science of the brain when it comes to this motivation and drive, because it makes sense why the more we move, the more our body would heal and think that it needs to give more strength. Because it's like, okay, if we're wired to survive, then the more energy we exert, the more energy our body is going to want to create and strength it's going to want to create to give us the opportunity to go out there and survive. But if we sit down and we're sedentary, then we're not going to get those resources to be, energetic and survive. So it only makes complete sense. Now, when we tie it into the brain and the biology of that, it'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, the classic hunter-gatherer, right? Where we don't have to hunt, we just gather, and the gathering is easier and easier, so we don't even have to expend any calories to put calories in, which is not natural for us.
We're like sitter-tweeters.
Basically. Evolution. But the reason I bring up those kind of baseline recommendations for people that are actually of older age is to bring light that though he's recommending those things for older people that want to live longer, those standards are below the average performance of a 20-year-old. And I try to help people realize that you don't want to shoot for average. You don't even want to shoot for just above average. If you really want your health to be good and you want to be happy and be of good mobility and strength and sound mind later in life, you have to shoot way over average because our average is getting pretty bad at this point. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You mentioned the science behind motivation, and Dr. Andrew Huberman, I'm a gross consumer of his podcast. He gives a lot of very thought-provoking topics, and one of which is he's mentioned more than once the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, and it's an area of your brain that can actually reflect your ability to be motivated and your willpower, and
it reflects it in size. It reflects it in size.
So someone that is of a higher activity level will have a larger anterior mid-cingulate cortex than someone who does not exercise. Someone who lives longer will have a larger AMCC, I'll call it, anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
There we go.
Someone who pushes themselves to do things that are uncomfortable will have a larger AMCC. So if you see the correlation between these things, what's going to increase the size of my AMCC? I have to push through discomfort. I have to move, exercise. I have to treat my body right, limit alcohol, limit nicotine, those things that are toxins to our body or decrease blood flow to the brain can in turn limit the ability to work the AMCC.
It's interesting because for most people, I think our go-to marker on if a person is healthy or is moving enough is just body fat. Usually we think, okay, hey, body fat is our indicator of if we're doing enough hard things or challenging ourselves enough. And this is a portion of the brain that probably correlates with body fat in people, but it's doing its own thing on if it grows, and I'm sure it doesn't shrink. Is it?
No, it can shrink.
So it's
almost like a muscle. Yeah, it has plasticity,
right?
and it's almost like a muscle within your brain.
Okay.
And they've shown, obviously, our neuroplasticity as we age, it decreases, but they've shown the ability to alter the size and strength of this area of your brain later in life as well. So with that being said, it's never too late to start making better decisions as far as your health, and it's never too late to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I try to get so many people to not aim for comfort and make decisions based off of what they know is going to be good for them. And sometimes we lack motivation, but if you get used to doing things because you know that they're good for you, then this AMCC that we're speaking of is going to get stronger. The motivation is going to make itself.
Sure.
You almost have to complete tasks without being motivated before you can be motivated to do the task.
Yeah, and not only without being motivated, but you're probably also fighting inner voice that's telling you not to go do it. So it's not only just like, okay, I have to find my own motivation. It might be like I have to weed my way through all this negative self-talk that's flooding my mind while I'm laying in my bed before I've completed my task, which I would call myself a pretty resilient and active person. And I still wake up in the morning sometimes and it's like, man, I could just lay here though. And then usually once I move and I'm upright, I get like 30% more energy and I'm like, oh man, no, I should just go. Right. But that initial like going from horizontal to vertical sometimes takes some real power, and and I feel like a powerful person.
And a lot of people would agree with you on that. Some people, that's the hardest thing for them, and that's why one of the tall tale signs of depression is sitting in bed all day, right? Because you don't have the motivation to even get up and start moving. But that's why it's so important to just start and do it. I forget, I wish I knew his name. Another doctor, he's more so does a lot of psychological research, and his advice to everyone is to start your day with the mindset of just do it. And it sounds cliche at this point because of Nike, but when you stop giving yourself an option to say no, and you stop giving yourself the time to think about whether or not you want to do it, because it doesn't matter if you want to do it. It doesn't matter if you want to go to work. You got to go to work, right? It doesn't matter if you want to pay your bills. So the amount of time that you spend thinking about it is going to work directly against you in whether or not you actually get it done. And that is procrastination, right? Simply put. But people don't realize the longer you procrastinate, the harder it is. And if you were to just take action before you felt ready, you might benefit yourself in a lot of situations.
Man, it's real. And I think every single episode we've recorded on this podcast, I gave some quote or at least a paraphrase of what Kobe Bryant said. So I have another one, right? So Kobe, in one of his interviews, was talking about how whenever he would work out, there would be a voice in his mind that would tell him, okay, if he had 15 sets, he was like, man, I'm at 12 and I should just stop here. It's enough. I'm doing heavy weight. It's super hard to do. No one can do this anyway. I don't need to get to 15. He said that he would never listen to that voice because the first time he listens to it, then the next time he might be like, you know what, I can listen again. And now you're in the snowball effect of giving him to that voice. And it's kind of crazy because even Kobe Bryant, even one of the most dog workers of all time,
human being,
still has this voice in his mind that tells him to stop short and not do enough. I don't think we ever get rid of it. I think we just build up, and you're defining this AMCC that possibly might be our muscle that combats our negative self-talk, right? Like,
and if it's weak, what do you do?
Right, you give in.
You work it out.
And the more you give in, and I remember whenever I train with you, we're doing hard workouts, and I get to 11, 12, and I'm thinking I got 15. I'm like, man, do I really want to hit these next 3? But it's like, I have to. One, because I know how many I've done, but also because I'm not trying to cheat myself. But at the same time, if you do need somebody else to hold you accountable, that can't be the worst thing, because you can't just try to ask someone to jump into like the pro level of these things. You probably need some help. So
and it's a very small percentage of people that can get Kobe Bryant results on their own.
Yeah.
Most people need a team.
Even him. I'm sure he wasn't just pulling it by himself everywhere.
I mean, a lot of times he was. Like, there's video evidence of that.
True,
but
with
that being said,
Mamba mentality.
Right. End of the day, he's still in a team. Yeah. Right. So his idea is, I want my team to be able to perform, because if his team is lacking, then that's going to directly affect his performance anyway.
There it is.
And that's going to require him to make decisions that he wouldn't have made otherwise, and basically be testing his willpower even more so. Whereas when you take a more community look and you want everyone around you to thrive, and you want this to be a collaborative effort, then all of a sudden you don't have to try as hard. But then all of a sudden your efforts have more value to them. You can see the result more clearly because you have assistance. And that's why the selflessness that goes into the difficulty of life is very important as well. Once we remember that it's difficult for all of us to be motivated, it's difficult for everybody to get out from under the warm covers when it's cold this time of the year, right? You're not alone in the struggle of being motivated. I am really against New Year's resolutions because I feel like people are waiting for an opportunity to be motivated.
Okay.
Right? And they're like, okay, it's a new year, I'm going to do this. The new year is good for tracking your progress, but it shouldn't be what we wait for to start anything. Really anything except a new semester of school.
Well, why though?
Because you're waiting. You're waiting again.
Yeah.
So that's just increasing that procrastination.
Okay. Yeah.
So you had an idea in your head of around Halloween time, like, man, I'm really getting out of hand with these sweets. I should probably do something. on January 1st.
Yeah. After Thanksgiving.
Man, I went a little too crazy on Thanksgiving. I should probably do something on January 1st. And then it's Christmas. And then it's New Year's. And you've had all these events and birthdays and weddings and holidays in between the thought that you had that maybe you should get your life together.
Yeah.
And you've made 500 more bad decisions that have compounded. It would have been so much easier for you to start when you first thought about it.
Yeah. And that probably doesn't add to the strength of this AMCC.
No, procrastination does not at all.
Yeah, which might actually give into the negative self-talk, which is making you use your muscle in the opposite way. And that's what makes it difficult, because you brought up like nicotine and alcohol to your overall well-being. And one of the ideas there is that if you feel a craving and you're not able to use your conscious willpower to say, no, I'm not going to fulfill this craving right now, then you're compounding in the opposite direction. You know what I mean? Because you make the choice and then you make it again, and now you're building strength towards actually using your substance. Right. So it's like, it's hard to be like, okay, I'll do it today, but not do it tomorrow, because you've already tried to strengthen your I'm going to do it energy.
And it's a tough mindset to break. I tell everyone guilt is an awful emotion. We don't have enough time in this world to feel guilty about the decisions that we make, even when we acknowledge that we can be better. Some people, it seems like they have to feel guilty about that donut, or they have to feel guilty about skipping the gym for them to actually kick it in and feel motivated to do it. That's why I don't even know if motivation is always good. Sometimes you got to do stuff before you feel motivated, because you get that negative feedback like, well, now I'm motivated to be better because I don't fit my pants anymore.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Dude, and for me, I already know, because I've such a habit of just working out, and that some days I'm just like in autopilot. I'm not motivated to go. I just find myself in my car going. And then I just find myself putting on a song I like. And now I find myself starting my reps. And it's like, there was no motivation there. I really don't even feel super pumped. Maybe once I'm done, but like for the whole time, it's not even like I was super excited. You know,
that's exactly the point. We rely so much on the perfect environment. Like, I want an empty gym. I want this song playing. I need my pre-workout and my meal at this time and this amount of hydration, this amount of sleep. And then one thing falls out of place and you have an excuse to not do what actually mattered. Right. And I've talked myself out of working out before. I've shown up to the gym with my headphones and left. I think a lot of people have done that.
Without your headphones. You got there and you're like, I don't have my headphones, so I'm leaving. Is that what you? Yeah. Sure.
Only because I was like in that mindset. I'm like, I'm ready. Listening to music, pulling up, like park, and then I'm like, oh.
I'm like, bro, I don't have my headphones. Never mind.
Switch from my music to silence and then work out. But then you see people, if you've watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, sit in an empty apartment building and work out in silence.
I haven't seen
for 2 hours.
I have to check that out. That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I've done it. I've done that just because I saw it. I was like, wow, that's kind of inspiring. That's crazy. And then you do it and you get a different experience. You feel locked in and you feel more one with yourself, one with your muscles. I'm big on mind-muscle connection. So you take away the other stimuli and distraction. You can focus more on what your body's doing, and you're more in tune and you have more control. And so I can see that benefit very, very clearly as to why you would do that if you're a bodybuilder or somebody that relies on their body for their profession, right?
For sure. And you get the opportunity to pulverize that negative self-talk, because if you're in silence, there's no stimuli to take your thoughts off. So if they're sitting there trying to tell you about what's difficult or what you shouldn't do, you get to just keep shutting it up over and over again if you're only sitting there with your thoughts, which I think is just a beautiful thing. You know, I have a challenge. People quit drugs cold turkey. If you can quit fear cold turkey, then I believe that you find so much more freedom. Now, quitting fear, I think, is almost more difficult than quitting an alcohol addiction, because fear is just a normal response for a human being. Like we said, we're not the top of the food chain, but it's almost all times an illusion about what we're afraid about.
Right.
So, man, you know, they say that enlightened people only fear itself. But I love that statement, because fear is like the emotion, and all of the forms it could take are fake.
Yeah.
You know, it's only the emotion that we feel, but all the ideas we have in our head about how this could go wrong, what could go wrong,
Yeah, we made
how
that.
it will go, it's just fake. It's just fake. But you do feel fear. That's the real hormonal
Right.
excretion going on inside your body, but it's normal, and you can use it as a tool
You
to
can.
blast off.
Right. Yeah, another valuable point. No fear was actually my theme for 2023. Instead of doing resolutions, I do themes. So no fear was my theme of 2023. And 2024, going into it with a growth mindset. I felt like I learned a lot last year, but like I was saying off camera to you, this year is really big on application, which is another level of learning, right?
Right.
And another level of like wisdom and understanding when it comes to these topics. You can rattle off facts all day, but when you can put it into practice and teach it to someone else and integrate it into a company and make it come to fruition and actually be like a tangible concept rather than something in your head, that is so much more valuable. And that's a difficult process that, you know, again, you have to be motivated to do it or just do it. A lot of the things that aren't going to be written out for you ahead of time, that you just have to gather data and figure out what you're going to do with it, that can be one of the hardest things you do. And that's why I think that, you know, formal education is so
You're saying when you have to be creative, right?
when you have to be creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. But formal education is so undervalued because that structure gives a lot of opportunity. Regardless of what you feel of the content that's being shared with you, it's very hard to teach yourself basic principles and topics in an organized and time efficient manner.
Very difficult.
Right.
Yeah. And then to even have an environment where you can have a consistent, safe and quiet place to learn that information, that's already hard to do. There's so many things that we've conquered to be able to build a classroom, right? Like such a privilege to have a classroom.
Yeah, and that's why it's sad that, you know, some schools aren't given the resources and the personnel that they need to really thrive. It would be nice if all of these classroom settings could be conducive to learning, because I think that there are some very common settings in education that are just not going to help anybody. White walls, no windows, you know, 40 kids in a class, all of those things. I mean, for me, it was okay. You know, that was basically what our school looked like, right?
Yeah, it was.
It's interesting though, because we had an open campus. Is that what you would say? How we have to go outside to our classes.
Right.
If you're not from Arizona or maybe California, you might not be familiar with that, but our lockers are outside and most of our hallways are outside, and then the classroom is inside, if you can picture that. Kind of weird saying it out loud, but you know, pros and cons. We went to Corona.
Yeah.
Mountain Point down the street, they didn't have no outside.
That's true. There are a lot of like different structures. It's, you know, it's interesting as you were talking about. Can you say the full word for that AMCC again?
Anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Right. So as you were describing this and just overall what we're doing right now, trying to create and understand a deeper knowledge of this brain function and region, I was thinking about, you know, a very simple psychological concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? This is something that they learn in pretty much any Psych 101 class or even a teaching class that you could take, right? And it basically says that until you can move on to the next level of contemplation or need, the first level has to be met, right? So the first one's physiological needs, right? You need just safety in general. If there's danger imminent, it's going to be very hard for you to learn. It's going to be hard for you to think. It's going to be hard for you to contemplate, all that type of stuff, because you're just going to be in fight or flight.
Right.
Parasympathetic nervous system is going to be like, dang, I got to go, right? But then if you get that conquered, they have love and belonging, right? So now I want a group. Now I want a group that I feel like I can fit into and I have a purpose with, right? And this is why they'll point to usually young boys that live in poverty, they may have their physiological needs met, but the love and belonging might not be there, right?
Yeah.
So then we have like the phenomena of kids joining gangs or getting into groups of young boys where they're doing some nefarious activities.
Or even young girls.
Or young girls, right? Boys usually have the stigma of gangs, but exactly, it's a human thing. It's not really based on gender, right? And then after that, self-esteem. The confidence, achievement, respect of others, the need to be a unique individual.
And sometimes that can be negative, right? If the love and belongingness level is corrupted and you're still moving through the hierarchy of needs, and then all of a sudden your status comes because you are a leader of a gang or because you did some heinous act that other people praised you for, right?
Right.
And yeah, I think, what do you think? Do you think love is like the big hang up for the majority of the world, or? I mean, I don't want to say majority of the world.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the world is not getting the physiological.
Yeah,
needs,
and that was going to be where I brought this all back around to say, like, if you have those base ones met, how much you're already privileged, right?
Yeah.
If you just have the base ones met. But if you want to ask me for the average American who isn't struggling to have the physiological or safety needs met, then yeah, I do think that, I think the self-esteem part is our hardest part, because even if we do belong, sometimes if we have low self-esteem, we're not going to feel that way, right? So we're going to be like, oh, they don't care about my unique makeup, or they don't actually know me for who I am. Nobody understands me. All these types of things where we just, and we're making assumptions at that point, and we're also kind of set up with the way we compare ourselves to one another to have our self-esteem be hard to grow, right? But then like the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization, which is a lot about what we talk about here, right? We don't sit here and talk about our physiological or safety needs really ever. Sometimes we've had pods about love and belonging. More we talk about self-esteem, but in a lot of our conversations we're getting to like self-actualization and really feeling blessed about having the ability to get into a deeper thought. If you think about it, to sit around and contemplate something so you're not just on the surface means that you have so much privilege. You have the ability to take an idea and then not worry about what's going on around you, if you're going to eat later, if someone's going to care about you, and you sit and you contemplate.
I mean, we're sitting here having some people don't live in a safe enough environment to sit and have a conversation in one place for an hour, right?
Right. I mean, I work with students who they have legit reasons why it was hard for them to get their homework done, because they have a bunch of little siblings that are doing a whole bunch of things right when they get home, and they're sharing a room with this many people, and they're actually having that problem. It's not just an excuse to not have their homework done. And it gets kind of difficult to assign so much different stuff because of the environment they're even in, right? Yeah, we're sitting here potting with almost silence around us.
Yeah, or the kids that are falling asleep in class and the teacher wants to get on them, but it's like they don't sleep at home, right? Because their home environment is not conducive and it's disruptive, and not only can they not learn in their home, but they don't feel safe and they can't get rest. And it's just this concoction for failure. And we just all have to be more understanding of those. I mean, we have to be all understanding of each other,
right?
And not think that we know the whole story.
And I hate to be the guy to be like, that's the motivation. That's all the motivation you need, is to imagine the people that don't have the levels that you do. But sometimes I feel that way, because I'm like, if you're able to sit around and have free time to be on your phone or watch something for entertainment, then you have the ability to recreate the way you think about your willpower and get up and move and build strength. And
I mean, having an able body is something I thank God for every day. And when I don't take the time out to exercise in a day, I don't feel like I'm showing gratitude for the body that God has given me. And I like to take it away from like a theological standpoint, because I'm sure we have some listeners that don't believe in a higher power. And I think that this motivation conversation is a lot more difficult with those individuals. But even with that, regardless of what you think of higher power, your power is equivalent to any other human being.
Dude, and it takes willpower to even do the theological things. So like I want to stay with biology, because we're talking about the AMCC part of the brain that strengthens if you make harder choices.
Right.
I'm imagining it almost like the resilience center of our brain.
Exactly.
And even if you were going to be disciplined to do some theological studies, you would still have to get up and do it. So you would be strengthening that part of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
When I was in school, and I'm not going to try to get too off track, but I did my senior thesis on the effects of meditation on our amygdala, which is the emotional center of our brain, and it is also neuroplastic. It grows and shrinks depending on how you use it. And what they found is that people who practice meditation had the same amygdala growth as these group of nuns. And the question was like, what? How is this person who's like this yogi who meditates every day have the same growth in their amygdala as a nun? Well, the nun was sitting and praying, and the yogi was sitting and meditating. Wasn't much difference to their amygdala, right? It was a quiet contemplation. It was gratitude and reverence. It was all these different things that made this emotional center, which gave them the ability to feel more empathetic and understand a wider spectrum of emotions, had the same effect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Labels and perceptions of terms can throw things off crazy. That's why I know a lot of people that believe in God but don't believe in meditation, right? So you're basically saying, to an extent, at least the effect is one and the same.
Of prolonged prayer and meditation? Yeah. Yeah.
And same thing with when I tell someone to stretch or go do yoga. I'm like, yeah, different type of stretching, but there's different types of yoga. Don't let the label of what we're talking about distract you from the purpose of the activity, right? Because there's a lot of terms for a lot of things. And I tell people, when it comes to exercise, move. Just move. Okay. I don't care if you lift weights. Actually, I don't care how you build strength. I'll say that.
That's ambiguous because I've been doing these spin classes, right? And I feel like they're very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not lifting heavy. But I feel like if I was...
Your legs are getting stronger.
That's true.
That spin, I mean, if there's enough resistance, it's a strength exercise.
True. They do be pumping those that weight. It gets difficult with enough of those spins.
It's mostly cardio, but you're doing intervals.
This is
right?
true.
But I've so many people, especially in the last couple months, she's like, yeah, I'm trying to do better. I'm eating well. And I started going for walks. I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, you going to the gym? Like, you got equipment at home? No, I'm just walking. It's not going to cut it. I was talking about the steps earlier in this episode. Yeah, you might reduce your risk of some chronic diseases that are completely avoidable. But if you're 70 years old, again, I like to bring up hip fractures. You need muscle mass to protect your bones and your joints. You need strength to keep yourself from falling on your face.
Yeah.
You need muscle mass and strength to survive in an accident. I got T-boned in college. I took a Ford F-150 to the shoulder. And my dad told me that, well, okay. That's the way I say it. But my driver's side door got smashed in. The grill of the truck was right there at my window, shatters the window. I can't crawl out of the door. I got to crawl out the other side. The truck hit me so hard, my sunglasses flew off of my face. My momentum went towards the opposite door, watched my sunglasses hit that door, heard the car shut off. And I'm just mad. I'm like hitting the steering wheel. I'm like, no effing way.
Punching the grill of the truck.
I didn't even fully understand what's going on. I knew I was in an accident. I didn't know what was happening. My car's still sliding. And I had to climb out the other door. And I get out, adrenaline running. I didn't feel like anything had just happened to me.
Wow.
Now, the next day, my shoulder hurt, my knee hurt.
Yeah.
I had a headache, right? But if I hadn't been, I was 21 at that point. If I hadn't been lifting weights for the past 7 years, I probably would have needed to be in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because looking back at the pictures is really scary. And there was something even though I wasn't injured hardly, I was pretty traumatized by this situation, right? I'm hesitant to make left turns and not wanting to go back to that intersection that it happened at, which is right by my home. So it's just every day thinking about it type thing, right? And that's without the physical trauma, just the emotion that I felt in that situation. Now, take away the preparation that I done with my body and then see the rehabilitation. I have to rebuild my mind and my body. That's not a situation you want to be in. But so many of these situations that we will be in are inevitable. So it's how are you going to prepare yourself? And we look at exercise and diet as trying to look good. Mm-hmm. And it's so superficial and it's corrupt, and that is just wrong, because there's so much more purpose to us moving and using our bodies, right?
Right.
And there's like this overarching, I guess, idea of vanity that comes into play, probably because of social media, because people take things to an extreme, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's not what I'm talking about, having an 8-pack and 22-inch biceps and stuff like that. I'm talking about just exercise, basic. So many people will literally admit, I don't exercise, and that's not okay. Walking is exercise. I'm not going to say that walking is sufficient in the exercise that you should do, but it is exercise. And if you don't do any exercise, you're just shaving years off of your life.
Mm-hmm. So, what if somebody does get to a, I guess you could say, normal amount of exercise throughout the week? How do they upgrade?
Normal? You mean like the minimum recommendation?
Yeah, the minimum recommendation.
150 minutes.
They get to the gym, twice. Put in like an hour, 10, hour 20, 2 times a week.
Base recommendations would probably put you at going to the gym. We'll say 50 minutes 3 times a week.
And that's like elite, or what are you saying?
No, that's basic.
That's average.
Baseline.
Oh, okay, got it.
Baseline recommendation.
Okay.
Average is not working out.
True.
That's why I tell people, you don't want to be average. You don't want to shoot for above average. We have to go past that, because average now isn't okay. Not in America.
Average is unhealthy for us.
Average is unhealthy.
Wow.
It is normal to be unhealthy. People like to say the word normal. Mm-hmm. It's normal to have a chronic disease. It's normal to have high blood pressure. It's normal to be overweight. Oof. More than 50% of the world is overweight, right? And I think, oh gosh, I don't want to mess up these percentages, but a weird amount of people are obese, and an even weirder amount are morbidly obese, right?
Right.
And these are people that the average person doesn't see every day, because they can't go to the grocery store. They can't survive going for a walk at the mall or walking their dog, right? They staying at home all the time. And this is a compounding effect of not using your AMCC in your willpower to get up and move. And there's a lot of reasons to go into it: depression, injuries, all types of things. But there's ways around it as well. And the average person that is in that situation did not have half of the issues that they currently have before they became morbidly obese. Because being obese is the number one way to accumulate as many diseases as you want. Obesity leads to heart disease. It leads to Alzheimer's and dementia. It leads to arthritis. It leads to diabetes. It leads to everything you don't want to have. So if we could backtrack and think of, how am I going to prevent most of these awful things?
Yeah.
Don't get obese.
Dude, and this is why I really like that when you talk about this topic, that you bring up this specific part of the brain that gets stronger as you make difficult choices. Because I think a lot of times we have that conversation in a very abstract way. Oh, I have willpower, but no, it's genuinely, if we could see that muscle the way we could see our triceps, I think things would make a lot more sense to people. It's just the fact that muscle is concealed within our skulls. So it's hard to see it. But if we could just see somebody's AMCC, it'd be like, oh, it makes sense why they're, I
guess if you really need to track that progress, you can get an MRI of your brain every once in a while and check it out. I wouldn't suggest it, though.
I would like to do that. I've never even thought about that, but I should.
The only reason I've thought about that is because, again, Peter Diamandis, he started Life Force with Tony Robbins. And they are making these facilities that do full body MRIs. And that's more so to prevent cancer and try to catch it as early as possible. Yeah. Full body MRIs are not something normal that any doctor would prescribe at any given hospital, but we don't really have good ways of detecting cancer until after it's already in stage 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Right. But with these full body MRIs, they can see these abnormalities a lot easier. And they do that along with, I think it's like CT angiogram and a couple other tests. But basically, get a whole map of your body and using genome sequencing and artificial intelligence to analyze that data and get a whole layout. And you can have a very I guess, in-depth game plan of how you're going to avoid dying from a disease. And so that's just one technology that will one day be widespread and available to everybody. Unfortunately, right now, it's only a few facilities that will even do it, and it costs a whole lot of money. But one other reason why I'm looking forward to the future, especially the future of healthcare and the future of education, just because, one, a lot of people don't know that that's a thing, right? So one day, hopefully our kids will be learning about these new modalities and technologies.
Yeah.
Right?
True. I'm as you say that, I'm thinking like in the past, it was easier to conceal what was true. And now we're going to have new instruments that make you more accountable to what's true. Because if you get like a body and mind audit once a year, you're going to have way more understanding of where your health lies. You know, we don't audit ourselves that often. Right. Financially, we might not even audit. We should be auditing ourselves financially, but some people don't even do that. But as far as
tax season coming up,
true. As far as a physiological audit, that might be something we only get once we're sick. So it's pretty interesting to think that we might be able to really understand ourselves and reveal what's hidden.
And that's a good way to put it. I like to try to relate things to real life situations and finances as much as I can. So I think a lot of people can kind of conceptualize it a bit easier as the audit, because, you know, as a nurse and a fitness nutrition coach, I am assessing people pretty in depth, especially compared to your average trainer. And then on top of that, I usually advise people to get blood work done. There's just more data, more things to add to that auditing process, right? And then hopefully we have all the details of your life that we need so that we can make a realistic plan for you. Yeah. But if you don't get all the details, then you're going to get some cookie cutter response, and it may or may not work out for you. And you very likely fall back into whatever cycle you were in before because the preparation wasn't proper.
Yeah, and you kept more things within the field of being unconscious, right? So it's like you're practicing to be unconscious. Yeah. Whereas the more things you bring to light, now you're practicing consciousness because you understand what's happening.
Very common. I mean, how many people don't want to know about their diagnosis? Yeah. They think if they don't address it or don't learn about it, then it's not going to kill them. Yeah. And then a lot of people think that the diagnosis of cancer is what took them out. It's like, no, we just caught it really late. And we happened to find it when you had a month left. Like, we could have done something had it been a year ago. Yeah. But you haven't been going to your follow-ups. Yeah. Right?
You try to keep it in the field of being unconscious.
Man, I've had patients that come in with stage 4 cancer. They knew about it when it wasn't bad, but they didn't go to their follow-ups, man. Dang. And not only are the detection and prevention is important. So first we prevent. We put in efforts to prevent. Then worst case scenario, we detect. Okay, good. Then you either have to treat it or starve it or remove it, right? And the starving piece is a newer thought. And I heard a patient say that, and I was like, whoa, don't starve yourself. Like, that's not a good idea. But research shows that tumors, they feed directly off of sugar, right? And so if you're eating a low sugar diet, when you know there's a tumor in your body, you might fight a little bit harder against that tumor. But when you're feeding the tumor, giving it sugar, giving it everything at once so it can grow and grow and grow, then, I mean, you end up in a bad situation. And unfortunately, the American diet is very cancer provoking. And poor gut health can lead to colon cancer, gastric cancer, a couple of the worst cancers you could possibly have. You know, we're eating chemicals and living in an inflammatory state. And those are all good ways to spark a mutation that, could change your whole life. But I only say that as motivation for people to take care of the little basic things that are going to make your life better. Eating vegetables, eating fruit. Hopefully you know by now that eating protein is going to increase your health status. If not, eat more protein because, again, basic recommendations. I'm going to just say this off the top of my head. You do your own research here. I swear the baseline recommendation is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram. I'm pretty sure I've seen that places. That is 50% of what I would suggest someone to shoot for.
I don't even per kilogram of food you're eating, there should be 0.8.
So if you're 220 pounds,
okay,
you are 100 kilograms.
Sure. So I need 80 grams of protein.
That's what the baseline bare minimum recommendation is, but you wouldn't feel very good,
right?
Especially at your activity level if you were eating 80 grams of protein.
True.
But a lot of people aren't even meeting that.
Yeah, and I be eating for real.
Right.
I be eating.
Right,
but I also work.
With these weight loss drugs and stuff, people are just suppressing their appetites essentially, where they probably already weren't eating enough calories. Their metabolism's messed up because they weren't eating enough and they're eating junk. So now they're just more inclined to eat less. But restricting calories is not the answer to good health. You need good quality calories and the right assortment of nutrients. And I'm motivated to help people understand that because I'm tired of seeing the same situation over and over again.
There's two books that I think summarize a lot of what we're talking about as far as the mental side of this thing goes. Not the nutrition, but just talking about this AMCC. If you could say the full thing again, please.
Anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Yes. So 2 very popular books in the last 10 years. One has been The Coddling of the American Mind, right? That's by Greg Lukianoff, something of that nature. And then the other one is The Boy Crisis. Have you heard of this book?
Oh, I have.
Right. So The Boy Crisis, written by Warren Farrell and John Gray. Both of these books explain that not only is our environment maybe not conducive for the best nutrition or, sleeping habits, these different things, but it's also not conducive to us trying to do difficult things. And that could be for a plethora of reasons. If you want the different variables, you can read those books. But the overall idea is that we are not exercising and trying to grow this AMCC, and our environment isn't conducive to helping us grow it.
Yeah. So get outside, get moving, keep moving, and don't stop. Eat some greens. Colorful diet, please. Colorful diet. Blues, greens, orange, purple. All the colors you can eat, do it. And that may be hard, but hard is good. If you've listened to me before, difficult is not synonymous with bad. So 2024, I challenge you to go do some hard stuff and grow your anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And you can check out Dr. Huberman podcast if you want more information deep into what that brain structure actually does and nitty-gritty details. But I think we laid it out for you pretty good. Bottom line is there's a thing in your brain. If you try hard things, it's going to grow and make hard things easier to do.
And then there's this other thing in your brain that's this self-talk that's never going to go away. And you're going to have to conquer it every single day.
Yeah.
And
fall in love with your consciousness. Fall in love with your thoughts and move forth with love. I guarantee something good will happen to you. What you got?
Well, do you have anything else to add about this? I have nothing else. I think that this has been a motivational conversation for myself. I like to talk about things in a physiological and scientific way, so it's not always such an abstract idea, even though I do love going off into the poetic ways of life. I like to hear the, black and white, what is this and what are we working at? So,
as many people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My final thought is don't wait around for motivation to actually do something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're going to be doing stuff without motivation. Oftentimes you're going to be doing stuff without motivation. And it's many of those times that you're going to get the best result you could possibly get.
Yeah. And being as accountable as possible. Maybe you don't really have as many haters as you think, and maybe you're just hating on yourself.
Haters gonna hate. All right, man, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 49, R&B podcast. First episode of the year, 2024.
There it is.
Good God. Thanks, God, for this opportunity. And like last week, we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.